And the widespread belief over the last month or so is that it will be Netanyahu and the Netanyahu government that makes a decision at some point when to turn their attention away from Hamas in Gaza to Hezbollah in Lebanon. There's a widespread belief in some of the sources that I speak to that that is going to happen, that they're not going to allow this threat to remain, and that they feel like they have the agency now that they're in a war economy, their population is in war mode, that they will turn their attention to Hezbollah. But that's going to be a much longer, prolonged fight. It's going to be an extreme fight that is going to involve tens of thousands of Hezbollah men in southern Lebanon. This is going to rival the 1980s and the wars we saw here in this region time and time again.
Israel's military has dropped leaflets into Gaza City telling Palestinians to evacuate. The IDF says the city will remain a dangerous combat zone. Now, thousands have already fled after heavy bombardment over the past 2 days. We can talk to our reporter, Zach Anders, who's on the border of Israel and Lebanon. Zach, good afternoon from London. I mean, the immediate question is, where can these people actually go?
Yeah, it's a good question at this point because the Mawasi area is massive at this point. Over 1 million people estimated by the nonprofits and the UN to be in the humanitarian zone that was designated as a humanitarian zone from the start. This latest evacuation call for Gaza City is telling them to go to different areas near Mawasi. So it looks like the IDF is essentially expanding that humanitarian zone. What's interesting about this is with this latest evacuation call, they have opened up now 2 corridors, one down the coastal road and another rather close to the fence between Israel and Gaza. Both these routes are supposed to be open. We don't know for how long, but the IDF says this is going to be a free access corridor where there will not be checks. That is interesting because over the course of this conflict, they've essentially severed north-south movement, and they've told us that Hamas, we're shutting down this movement because Hamas is moving amongst the civilian population, hiding themselves in these caravans, and that's how they keep eluding us. So to know that once again, the IDF is going to open up these roads for free access, it seems to conflict with their messaging, and I'm sure they'll come back in the next few days and tell us, well, Hamas has moved once again to XYZ area as they have been over the course of this conflict.
Right. Zach, is there also any time scale given in that message about leaving?
Yeah, that was an immediate call. We don't know how long it's going to last, these corridors again. But this did open up a lot of confusion yesterday when the IDF Arabic spokesperson said that this evacuation notice was now in order and those pamphlets were dropped because some of the Israeli media mistakenly were reporting that this was everyone inside Gaza to move away from Gaza City, and the instructions weren't very clear. So there was a lot of confusion yesterday online, social media here in Israel. I don't know that that had a great impact, obviously, on a population inside Gaza who many don't have access to regular internet anyways to see this confusion that was taking place. Yeah, but we just don't know how long this evacuation order is going to be in place. I think the more important thing to focus on here is how quickly does the fighting pick up, because often when these IDF evacuation notices come down, less than 24 hours after that, we start to notice the airstrikes and ground troops move into those areas that they say or they made those evacuation calls for.
Ceasefire talks have resumed in Qatar. They resumed yesterday. Has anything come out from that yet?
Yeah, it depends on who you ask. The mediators, or at least the mediator teams that are speaking anonymously, say that positive results come out of that. There's a team that's going to be dispatched to Cairo tonight. So it seems like at least in my time here over the last 9 months, this is the most we've seen these teams ping pong back and forth between Doha. They started in Cairo, they went to Doha, they came back to Israel, and now they're going to Cairo again. And the CIA director is involved. He's been in the region. We don't know which meetings he's attended. But it seems positive just based on the amount of movement that's been taking place. As for whether or not this is actually going to get to the finish line, there's been some reporting by Haaretz, one of the newspapers here in Israel, that plays into the rumors that we've heard for a long time, that Netanyahu has been somewhat sabotaging the talks, or that there's been some element of him not giving these teams, the negotiating teams, everything they need to get this done, or making public comments after some good progress that says, no, we're still going to end Hamas, which is something we saw him do again last week after these talks seemed to be picking up steam. So anybody's guess where this really stands, but just based on the movement and who's involved, the Mossad and the Shin Bet directors, it does seem rather positive.
You are on the border of Israel and Lebanon. As you say, you've been in the region for months now. What would you describe the level of volatility on that border being like at the moment?
You know, it's remarkable because there were two civilians, a father and mother in their 40s, who were killed just the other day by Hezbollah rocket fire. Obviously, you get calls within Israel for a harsh reaction, but what has been the reaction from both sides, from Hezbollah and Israel, has been, in the grand scheme of things, really contained. Hezbollah has been fine within somewhat of a 5-mile range of the Israeli border. The Israelis have been hitting positions all throughout Lebanon and even into Syria. But this conflict has really contained itself. Either side is being very calculated at this point, and the widespread belief over the last month or so is that it will be Netanyahu and the Netanyahu government that makes a decision at some point when to turn their attention away from Hamas in Gaza to Hezbollah in Lebanon. There's a widespread belief in some of the sources that I speak to that that is going to happen, that they're not going to allow this threat to remain, and that they feel like they have the agency now that they're in a war economy, their population is in war mode, that they will turn their attention to Hezbollah. But that's going to be a much longer, prolonged fight. It's going to be an extreme fight that is going to involve tens of thousands of Hezbollah men in southern Lebanon. This is going to rival the 1980s and the wars we saw here in this region time and time again. What is most concerning is really that you've got about 120,000 people, civilians, displaced since the start, since October 7th, on either side of this border. Both of them are pushing their coalitions, their governments. The people displaced in Israel, northern Israel, have been pushing the government to take some sort of action. And as you talk to people that remain up here, they want to see a rather extreme approach. You don't get a chance to hear from a lot of the people displaced in southern Lebanon. Obviously, Hezbollah has great control over that region. The Lebanese government, the Lebanese armed forces are pretty much non-existent in southern Lebanon. But this is a very volatile situation. At any moment, it could explode.
Zach, thank you very much indeed. That's Zach Anders, our reporter, who is currently stationed on the border of Israel and Lebanon.